On August 30th, 2025, precisely at 7 a.m., Flamingo missiles fired from the Odessa coast in Ukraine began speeding toward their targets in Crimea. These massive missiles plunged directly into the core of Russian defenses, almost as if they were intentionally exposing themselves to interception by S-400 systems. 3 Flamingo missiles became easy targets, yet they were launched openly in daylight. At that very moment, Russian generals were busy preparing a new offensive through Crimea and mistakenly considered Ukraine's actions to be purely defensive. In truth, Ukraine was depending on this very misinterpretation. The instant an attack is being prepared, defenses are often at their weakest, leaving small but critical gaps. Every Flamingo missile weighed 7 tons, carried a 1,150-kilogram warhead, and had a range of 3,000 kilometers. They were transported to the launch area in full view, clearly visible, as part of a deliberate offensive. While they were set up on launch ramps, the S-400 batteries that guarded Crimean skies were already fully active, making the operation extremely dangerous. Still, Kyiv accepted every risk, because that day, one small yet decisive element had been added to the strategy: a split-second delay in detection or a flaw in the threat priority sequence. Russian commanders assumed what they saw was a defensive gesture, but Ukraine had crafted its plan for precisely this moment. First, a silent curtain would fall. Then, a dark shadow would sweep across at low altitude. Preparing these heavy missiles for launch required time. Meanwhile, the other military units assigned to the operation had already been activated. Along with the Flamingos, UJ-26 long-range kamikaze drones played an essential role in the assault. Around 7 a.m., notable movement was recorded at the Russian Secret Service headquarters in Armyansk. Russian officers and intelligence units were busy coordinating drone strikes against towns in southern Ukraine. At the same time, helicopters were being readied on the Saraval front, and the Sevastopol coastal patrol shift for the morning had already been deployed. It looked as though Russia was fully prepared for a large-scale offensive through Crimea. But within minutes, irregularities started to appear in the airspace picture above the peninsula. They were small at first, but quickly multiplied, the effect of 3 Flamingo missiles and several UJ-26 drones. This weapon mix would surprise Russian intelligence and Black Sea naval units. In the initial stage, drones penetrated Crimean skies. UJ-26 drones required roughly 45 to 50 minutes of flight to reach their intended targets. About half an hour later, 3 Flamingo missiles were also launched. Their flight time was only 15 minutes. This meant both the drones and missiles would converge on Crimea nearly simultaneously, hitting together. As the drones drew closer, the Flamingos were launched one after another in 5-second gaps. Each followed a low-altitude, terrain-hugging path. Their systems included altimeters, inertial navigation, and GNSS, all tripled for redundancy. If GNSS was jammed, radar altimeters and digital terrain maps became the main reference. The missiles flew steadily at subsonic speeds, roughly 950 kilometers per hour, keeping low to avoid radar detection as long as possible. Their warheads were designed to pierce structures or disable them internally with delayed detonation. A single strike could collapse bunkers or paralyze them with shock waves. The 1,150-kilogram warheads carried more than twice the explosive mass of Tomahawk missiles. Aimed at Russian military sites, devastation was assured. Their 3,000-kilometer range gave Ukraine many possible flight routes, complicating Russian defense responses. Their fiberglass composite structures were specifically built to resist Russian electronic warfare attempts. Although the actual targets lay nearby, the variety of flight paths and uncertainty about launch origins made it difficult for Russian defenses. The first impacts in this mission came from the drones. the low-flying UJ-26 kamikaze UAVs entered Crimean skies from both the northwest and northeast. Each drone carried a 25 to 30 kilogram high explosive charge. With composite bodies and tiny radar signatures, they showed up as just 1 or 2 cells on radar scans. Their optical and infrared sensors allowed them to home in on power distribution points, waveguides, and fiber hubs. The drones flew at 150 to 180 kilometers per hour, guided by GNSS and inertial systems, with optical backups. Their ranges stretch from 200 to 400 kilometers, enough to hit targets even with jamming. Blinding attacks on radar created delays in signal processing, leaving Russian operators only seconds to respond. Ukrainian drones closed in so fast that interception was almost impossible. The first hit landed on the power unit of the 96L6AP detection radar. Though the antenna itself wasn't destroyed, the power and processing were delayed, slowing classification. Soon after, the MR-10M1 coastal radar's waveguide was destroyed. The antenna still rotated, but transmitted nothing. Within Crimea's layered defense network, total blackout was unrealistic. The true goal was to force small but critical delays in reaction. Russian Panzer systems managed to shoot down 2 UAVs. 4 others, however, struck their targets, damaging cabins and cutting communication links. These attacks didn't wipe out radars completely, but they caused delays long enough for low-flying missiles to slip through. This was the exact opening Ukraine had calculated, a strike launched in the middle of a temporary blind spot. 2 Flamingos were directed at Russian FSB headquarters in Armyansk, while one was aimed at Sevastopol. Ukrainian planners had also accounted for GNSS disruption. For this reason, Flamingos relied on inertial guidance, radar altimeters, and terrain mapping as well. Flamingo 1 locked onto the intelligence base's command and communication center. Its delayed fuse penetrator warhead detonated inside, not out. The outer concrete shell remained intact, but half a second later, the blast tore apart the base's electrical backbone. Screens glowed, but the data lines were dead. Field radios went silent. For defenders, this was even worse than total darkness. It caused uncertainty and wasted precious time. As confusion spread, Flamingo 2 struck the power distribution lines connected to the communication cabin. The damage would take weeks to fix. A GNSS disruption occurred just 15 kilometers from the site, but the missile switched to backups and flew on autonomously. Russian air defenses tried to intercept with Panzer fire, but low altitude and city clutter prevented success. Structurally, the base still stood, yet its command role was destroyed. Meanwhile, Flamingo 3 approached Sevastopol. Its designated targets were the pier's fuel manifolds and a command cabin. Destroying these meant the pier could no longer function. Ships wouldn't refuel, dock, or safely deploy divers. The missile dove to 15 to 20 meters altitude and hit with precision. Fuel pipes ruptured, the cabin exploded, and mooring structures collapsed. At least one hovercraft patrol vessel suffered severe damage after losing its berth. It was identified as either an A-8 or A-25 PS-class hovercraft, both able to move troops. Other vessels could no longer refuel, and the pier was out of service. Russian air defenses fired again, but no missiles were left to launch. The counterattack came too late, failing to lessen the destruction. Crimea had just endured a shocking joint strike by Flamingo missiles and kamikaze drones. Why hadn't Russia stopped them? The S-400 system wasn't weak. It could intercept multiple cruise missiles. Yet, none of the Flamingos were destroyed. The main reason was altitude. At only 20 to 30 meters, the missiles stayed invisible until they were within 20 to 25 kilometers. By then, radars detected them overhead, leaving no time for head-on interception. Rear chase attempts failed due to their low altitude, steady speed, and coastal radar clutter. This didn't prove the S-400 incapable, but showed how geometry and timing worked against it.
Ukraine's success depended on mere seconds of delay and the exploitation of low-altitude flight. The Flamingo's massive warheads were built for deep destruction, while the UJ-26 drones caused just enough distraction to let them pass. Though highly risky, the chance of success outweighed the risk of failure. 2 drones were downed, another wave recovered, and Panzer missiles targeted Flamingo 1. But backup systems kept accuracy intact. The targets had been carefully selected, and no major critical errors occurred. All 3 Flamingos hit their objectives. The consequences were serious. The FSB base lost all command and coordination ability. Its grid collapsed, communication cabins were wrecked, and field control was impossible. In Sevastopol, the pier was destroyed, fuel systems cut, 1 patrol hovercraft disabled.
The strike proved that even multi-layered defenses could be penetrated by large warheads, paired with low-altitude flight. From this point, Russia would have to rebuild its defenses with extra power lines, backup fiber networks, and mobile radars capable of handling low-flying threats. Until such steps were implemented, the holes left by the Flamingo strikes of that morning would remain permanently visible in the calendar. Thank you for watching, and do not forget to subscribe our channel.